Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl, back at season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Uh, just a little bit of a second, I want to let you know that for the time being, I'm going to be streaming directly towards YouTube instead of traditional Twitch, then exporting it to YouTube, because right now YouTube is acting weird and uh, I did not mind redoing a video like this. I did a couple of videos already, like a day or so ago, on Twitch, but it's still broadcasting, and I can't export it or do anything of the sort. And supposedly, it's supposed to be fixed within 72 hours, according to the Twitch uh, Twitter feed. But I don't feel like I need to wait that long, so I'm just gonna just redo my reviews. It's not a big deal. Luckily, I didn't do much beyond just 2 videos, which I can just redo right now. But anyway, hope you guys will enjoy this. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And hopefully, my audio is doing well. Like, I never did this before, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay. This is gonna be like a minor test. But anyway, yeah, season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh is very well done. It's one of my favorites. Like, as far as like Duel Monsters arc is concerned. Uh, this is if you haven't seen my previous videos of my season reviews of Duel Monsters, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, check out it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, and what my thoughts were on the very first season for Duelist Kingdom, then Battle City arc in season 2. But now we on to season 3, where we're gonna be like doing 2 arcs: the Noah Saga arc and the Shadow Realm arc to wrap up season 3. Well, beginning with the Noah's arc, obviously. I need a drink here. Now, the where we pick up after we left off in the Battle City arc, the hot air balloon or aircraft that Kaiba had his little semi-final stuff carrying on was hijacked by an unknown assailant using virtual technology to hijack his stuff to take control over the hot air balloon. It's not hot air balloon. It's like a what do you call those things? Like blimps, like those kind of blimps you see in like the Batman the animated series cartoon. And Kaiba gets his stuff. I didn't mention this before, but Kaiba gets his stuff taken over a lot by a lot of people. I mean, like first Pegasus, and Merrick, and then Noah coming up, and then in the next first couple of seasons ahead, you get 2 various other people hijacking his stuff or trying to take it over or completely taking over. It's like, for a genius, he should get his stuff taken over a lot, or people who shouldn't be that smarter than him, as much as he claims to be like the smartest man in the room kind of situation. But anyway, they were hijacked, and upon landing in this hangar, of course, like everyone comes off board, except for, of course, people who went to the Shadow Realm thanks to Merrick, like Odeon, Mai, and Bakura. And of course, Merrick, I don't know if he was asleep at the time. I can't remember what the situation was, because he didn't come off board. He just stayed on board and like just chose not to like investigate and see what's going on, whatever like that. Asizu, of course, stayed on, I guess, trying to keep an eye on the people that her brother really messed up. And then of course Kaiba's security, but everybody else just investigated, see what's being carried on, because they can't take off anymore. So Yugi, Kaiba, Joey, his sister, Taya, Duke, Tristan, Mokuba, uh, yeah, I think that's it. They all come into this room where this holographic images of the Big Five coming back and being led by this kid, this supposed kid named Noah. We know later to be Noah Kaiba, but I like Noah as like a semi villain because he's pretty much his design was pretty much based off Seto Kaiba's original design in season 0. You ever look up the Japanese season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh, you get to see how Kaiba originally supposed to have looked until the Kids WB kind of updated it. It's a little bit rainy outside. Hopefully it's not. Matter of fact, it's going ahead and it's a little bright. Sorry, it's a little ring light. I just want to make sure that it's a little dreary outside, so I want to make sure you guys can see me. You said what's up? Yeah, and this arc is awesome, and like I do like this arc because I do some interesting things. The fact that the Big Five, the last we saw them, we only saw them in silhouette for the most part up until this point. They helped Pegasus take over Kaiba Corp during Duelist Kingdom, but they actually show their faces after the arc was over, where Kaiba tried to confront them after he found out how they was trying to like back their way into taking over his company with the help of Pegasus. But instead of just firing them on us, which I think he did technically fire them on the spot, they try to like, convince like, well, before we go, there's still the little matter of the virtual game world we designed for you, Kaiba, that you haven't tested yet. And it's like, instead of just like, so I'll do that later. And it's kind of like, but he just goes in like, well, I was going to test that, and then once I come back, you guys are gone, kind of situation. That was really odd behavior, but it was the writing at the time. But I didn't, as I mentioned in my Duelist Kingdom arc review, if you check that out on my YouTube channel, as I mentioned that in there, I didn't really care for this little, it's only a small arc, but it's probably like my least favorite arc on the entire, probably in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh series, to be frank with you, because I figure it was like, well, I wouldn't say the most boring. I think like there's another arc before they wrap up Duel Monsters completely, where they go to this medieval time where the real world monsters exist kind of situation, but it's kind of virtual, kind of not kind of situation. Those two are probably like my least favorite. It's so boring. I just want to mention that now. I know I'm gonna bring it up once we get to that part in the future, but I think they are like the most boring parts of Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as arcs are concerned. They're the most boring. It's some very Lord of Rings-ish mixed with Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it's like not entertaining. Even though I'm not a fan of Lord of Rings per se anyway, but this little thing was always boring. But when they came back, they Noah, who's pretty much taking over this virtual world, he's like the king here, even though he's a little kid. He tasked the Big Five, where if they help him defeat Seto and help reclaim his rightful place as head of Kaiba Corp, they get if they beat like each individual, one of these individuals in a duel, they can take over their bodies and come back in the real world, and they can reclaim their rightful place with him as the lead. But he wanted to duel with some bit of honor, so that way he doesn't feel like he did it on illegitimate means, because in Yu-Gi-Oh there's always like a lot of characters. It's kind of like the whole Japanese, of course it's Japanese created, but there's always this mindset for a lot of characters in Yu-Gi-Oh series as a whole, where there's like an honorable duels, and it's like, when characters go outside the bounds of that honor system, they're very like, not only they're dishonorable, it's like you just hope they just lose outright because of, you know, it's that because there's winning gracefully and there's losing gracefully, and like when if you don't do either, then you're just scumbag, and it's like, f you, who cares at this point. Uh, but there's little holes opening up. Well, the big five trapped in the virtual world because, and this is full spoiler, by the way, they trapped because after the events of the previous arc after Duelist Kingdom, and they tried to beat Kaiba in the virtual world and trap their minds there, with the help of Yugi and Kaiba combining their monsters with uh, uh, the most powerful monsters together to defeat their five-headed dragon. They end up getting their minds trapped here, and they've been stuck here ever since until this point when Noah found them. So when Noah tasked them to help him out, they pretty much at his whim at this point. So the floors open up for each of these people, and they teleport in random different places, trying to divide and conquer essentially. Like not only a war strategy, it's a business strategy. So this is like a Kaiba centered story. And it's a nice little arc because we get to know more about Kaiba. Because always loved this as a kid because I never knew what's going on with the Kaiba and his brother and their history. It was never fully explained, and we get this nice little slice of his life where, well, as I will explain at the end of this arc, I like the fact that they try to get. I mean, even though Yugi and his friends are forced in this family drama of Kaiba's, they want to make sure they help him. But I kind of wish they, don't be Yugi specifically don't be the overall savior. Like they should be put to the side, or at least put on the sidelines to let Kaiba handle things his way and be the overall savior in this arc, which it didn't turn out that way technically. But they're teleporting in different places, and Yugi meets up with Gansley, who is the leader of the Big Five. He's like a businessman. He goes over his tail. I'm going over each of the Big Five's tail because they all slimy in one way or the other. And Gansley told Yugi a story of how when he was a kid, he took over his neighbor's lemonade stand and profited off of it and make like the number one lemonade stand in the neighborhood. And then when he grew up to be like a businessman, he took pleasure in just firing people on a whim or just causing like suffering to his employees. He even calls his duel monsters his employees instead of just monsters. And like he had no qualms of sacrificing his employees, any way he see fit, which discussed Yugi obviously to no end. And of course, the unique dueling strategy in this arc during this virtual world is, of course, they don't have their own cards here in this virtual world, so they use the database so they can just pick out whatever cards they want from the database to make their deck. And I also like the fact that because Yugi and Kaiba at this journey have their Egyptian god cards, but it's a nice way of keeping their most OP cards to the side so they won't win outright, obviously. Because obviously if they summon the Egyptian god cards, they'll just beat every time. But it's a nice way to put them in like a challenging, pre-Egyptian god card and put them in like a more challenging state. So they can really put their skills to the test without relying on those god cards. But Gansley stated about the new dueling rules where after a deck is formed, each player chooses a deck master, a monster out of their deck to serve as their side, at that side, and each one has like a particular ability. But Yugi had Karibo, with his ability of Rainbow Arc, where you can eventually uses to attack Gansley directly. But Gansley chose Deep Sea Warrior. Now, if you watch my YouTube videos of me playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist, I tried out a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters decks, and I tried out the Big Fives deck. You can check that out on my channel whenever you can and later on. But I tried out the Big Fives deck. It's actually surprisingly pretty fun, but each one, only show like a little bit of their own particular card set. So I combined them all to make a decent deck. Gansley has Deep Sea Warriors, so his deck master ability is called Reflector Hold, which means that he can sacrifice if one of his monsters is about to be attacked. He can sacrifice at the bare minimum 2 monsters to activate Reflector Hold. So whatever monster they attacked is attacking, he reflects that attack back at the opponent, which is kind of like Magic Cylinder's effect in a way. And the way his deck is set up, he always have a restock of monsters on the field enough to sacrifice. But the Reflector Hold does not work if a monster is attacking directly, which is ultimately how Yugi wins. Then after that, Taya meets up with another Big Five member, Crump, who's the accountant of the Big Five. And he's a little more jokey and like kind of like one of the. This is kind of like the way Joey is to the group, Yugi's group, the kind of comic relief. Crump is that way for the Big Five. When he's a little more animated and goofy, he took over Nightmare Penguin as his deck master, which increases his water type creatures attack power by 200 points. Now he's kind of got a more of a tragic backstory out of the Big Five, but he also got like a terrible side to him too. But when he was a kid, his parents neglected him as a kid, usually alone in his room, counting things. That's why he had like a love for numbers, which grew to his career as an accountant. But he also had a fondness for penguins, and he thought it was so endearing that both parents stayed to take care of the young, and because penguins are revered in doing that kind of thing. And if that would have ended, that he'll have probably the most tragic backstory out of the Big Five, because it is sad the fact that he was neglected for so long. It will stuck any kid's development stage at that young age, where parents are not around to like be there to love the kid and raise the kid. But the most slimy story of Crump is that he's a massive pervert. That's why he was so gung-ho about like taking over Taya's body. He's a creep. He's like Weinstein creep, but they didn't really fully explore that avenue, but you can tell that's where they was leading. I'm pretty sure maybe in the Japanese or manga, that especially manga, because they don't hesitate in exploring those kind of avenues when like slimy like creeps like that shown their creepness. Anyway, he dueled Taya, and of course Taya, thanks to what she remembered about how to play Duel Monsters from Yugi, took down Crump. Even though she's obviously not like one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh players, but I mentioned this before when I tried out like a Taya deck a long while ago. It boggles the mind because technically, and like a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh fans agree as well. And like if you watch the YouTuber TGS Anime, who does a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh videos, I love him. He's great. I watch his videos a lot, and even he crunched the numbers essentially, and it's like by technical standards, Taya Gardner in Yu-Gi-Oh Duel Monsters has technically never lost a duel that she was ever in. and she only been in 3 duels out of the entire series, and she technically never lost. And the reason I say technically is because the first time we dueled, it was like off screen, and she beat Joey when he was complete novice at the game. Second time she played was in Duel's Kingdom when Yugi lost the duel against Kaiba on top of the castle when Kaiba threatened to do a murder suicide essentially if Yugi completed an attack, which he didn't, and Kaiba's next turn he attacked and won, and it was Yugi's first big loss, and he was like kind of a distraught. And my trying to like cheer up at the same time trying to get Yugi out of his funk. Taya was doing the same, but she thought like Mai was being harsh and whatever like that. So Taya and Mai dueled, and Mai obviously would have beaten Taya, but she decided to like surrender, which caused Taya to win. So that way, Yugi, his drive to duel again is restored. But God, there's no reason for her to win. And then of course this third duel that she ever done against Crump, she beat him by actually playing the game to this end completion, and we can actually see it. And wow, it's just like boggles the mind that how she, like Taya's like technically the best duelist by technicality, and it's like wow, that's just wrong on some level, you know. But anyway, because like Taya's probably like my, I want to say she's like my least favorite character out of the entire series. There's worser characters like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, the love interest there. I forgot her name. We'll get to it once I start reviewing other Yu-Gi-Oh! Arcs, or generations. But that is probably my least favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Character out of the entire series, because she's pretty much just like a cheerleader but doesn't even duel or do anything. But anyway, then next is Joey going up against Johnson, the attorney of the Big Five, and this dude is probably like the most slimeball of them all, at least in my opinion. Is that he once sent an innocent man to prison for allegedly stealing a boat, even though he had like a phobia of water, but somehow he still sent him up the river. And it's like, how's that even legal or possible? But Johnson is known to bend the rules in courtroom, and it's shown and displayed when he's dueling against Joey. Even somehow like, encrypting a bit of Noah's system so he can, at the very least, tweak the result of Joey's die rolls when he's using his graceful dice or his skull dice. And then, of course, Noah took notice of this when because he's controlling the virtual world. It's like it will go notice as soon as something goes awry, and he wasn't responsible. So Noah jumped in the middle of this duel and just told everybody. And I love this scene. It always cracked me up every time I see it. It cracked me up as a kid when like Joe is like, so Johnson has been cheating, and Noah's like, I'm afraid so. He's been using my system to rearrange the results of your dice roll. And then Joe is like, how I'll rearrange your face, you slimy little piece of crap. And it's like I love that outburst, because I behaved exactly the same way when I was a kid, when like he just like the outburst, like, yeah, this son of a gun need to be like, need to get knocked to the middle of next week. Just the worst cheating out of the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's like, I don't know, it's a tie between him and Weevil as far as like cheaters out of this entire series, or this Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. I think these two are probably like the worst cheaters out of the entire series, because like, wow, that's just, and like, of course, Johnson's going to try to plead his plead his case. Plead his case. Like, Master Noah, you gotta understand. I can't take this place anymore. It's driving me insane. Like, I do a pretty good Johnson. I always like making fun. I love that voice is so goofy. I was like, it's like I always mock that voice. Uh, uh, of course, Noah didn't want to hear any of it, but Joey convinced him to, if Johnson, of course, uh, finished the duel with him without any more cheating, uh, the whole taking his body thing will remain on the table. And Noah's like, have your way. And then it's like, I'll be monitoring, but okay. So Joey uh, uh, did a fast one on Johnson by playing a card where, because Joey has a lot of luck-based cards. I really love Joey's deck, and I love using like luck-based cards with him. And it's like I love this duel in particular because a lot of Joey's duels is pretty fun to watch, especially when he pulls those luck, especially a duel when we get to the Seal of Orikako's arc. When I start binge watching that, because after I just finished watching binge watching season 3, I'm gonna start binge watching season 3 of Jackie Chan Adventures so I can do a review of that. Because once Jackie Chan's adventure is over, I don't know if I'm going to go into Static Shock binge watch and review of that series, or I think I might just jump into that, and I might tack on binge watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventures as like season reviews too. I just haven't decided fully on doing any extra because it's like already has like a lot of seasons for me to go through, but I don't know, it's on the table. But I think because when Joey meets up with Johnson, he has an automatic distaste for him, because I think because in the Japanese anime and the manga, I think mostly in the manga, Joey and his sister, their parents are divorced, and they pretty much split up, and they split custody of the kids, or at least I'm not sure how it went exactly, because I doubt like they will allow them never to see each other, or at least see each other's parents. They have to like Joey had, because the father took Joey and the mother took Serenity, and I doubt that they just never saw each other's parents again. But because like their mother showed up at least one time when after Duelist Kingdom, and Joey's bringing the money in to pay for Serenity's operation. So we've seen the mother. So Joey has been around his mother. So it would stand a reason about the father still being around in some capacity, but he's never seen in the show. But I think like he blames lawyers for causing, in a way, his parents split, the broken family. And since I think when we met Joey, he was kind of at least before the entire series even started, in flashbacks, Joey and Tristan was kind of like the local punks or bullies. But it wasn't evil. There's like more of like evil bully at that school, even worse than them. He was more sadistic. Joey was, and Tristan was more at the time more mischievous bullies, that still had a soul, but if it wasn't for little Yugi, they probably would have gone down that road to be like worser people. But I think maybe, because I cannot recall, maybe anybody who has read the manga, because at some point I want to buy the English manga books of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's probably like the only manga I really want to actually read, but because that gets intense. It's like Yu-Gi is like pretty much Jigsaw from the Saw movies, but I think it's if I remember correctly, or at least it's possible that because of the way Joey was acting before the series started with being a bully, it's just like he was pretty much acting out, and I don't think his father was, you know, well, I'm not even sure, 100% sure. Just take what I say with a grain of salt. The fact that I think his father, maybe not abusive, but very neglectful uh, of his son, and maybe his daughter to a certain extent, because he never bothered to show up in like the hospital to make sure his daughter was okay, and how the operation went or anything like that. But anyway, uh, uh, after that, stint with Johnson, uh, next is the next Big Five member, Nesbitt, who was the mechanical engineer of Kaiba Corps, building like war machines and what have you for Kaiba's adoptive father, Gozaburo. And his little backstory, he pretty much just like don't like being around people. He was kind of like Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic movie. The fact that if these two was in the same room, they would completely understand each other. And I'm pretty sure like Nesbitt will easily agree with Robotnik's line in the Sonic movie is that like, I like robots. They never ask for breaks or day off or getting let out early to have a beer with the local fellas and blah blah blah, or invite you to annoying weddings or anything like that. It's just like just complete obeys and just whatever. And it's like I think Nesbitt exudes that same ethos as Robotnik, and even when he took over as the Robotic Knight as his deck master, he even talks in like a robotic monotone voice. And his grudge against Kaiba, because Kaiba, now that he took over, changed the entire company into a gaming company instead of a company that makes war machines for a living. It's kind of like the way like Tony Stark is. Like his family was built upon making machines for war, until Tony eventually turned it to like stuff that well, it's like well, in the current comics is like Stark Enterprises. It just builds like apps. Currently in the comics they build like apps and machines that help benefit the world more so than destroy the world, kind of situation. And in a way, Kaiba's company now being like a gaming company kind of helps the world in a way, because people who doesn't like games. So anyway, he was just pretty much like cold-hearted. Even the fact that he decided to make a 3v1 with Duke, Tristan, and Serenity versus him. And even though as Tristan's trying to plead Serenity's case that she is now a duelist, she can't be involved in this, and it's like, oh well, she's here in the virtual world, she's part of this now, and I'm including her in this duel. So he forces a duel disc on everybody, and he specifies nobody helps each other. Everybody's doing their own, and anybody who breaks that rule is automatically out of the duel and loses. And in a way, it's kind of like a sick genius in a way, because I mean, if you've seen the series, you know that he ultimately loses, but so does Tristan beforehand, because it didn't matter to him if maybe he loses ultimately, but as long as he takes out at least one of them, he will be guaranteed to have a body, which turns out to be Tristan at the end. But he was just like dogpiling on Serenity most of the time because he knew she was the weakest link, because this girl like took I think it was in her second term. I mean, she already in her first term put like a monster in attack mode, knowing that it was like very weak, and then not knowing that when you put like a monster in play, vertically they're in attack mode, horizontally they're in defense mode. That's why they got defense and attack. But then her next turn, after she was instructed like you got to put your monster in defense mode, and she still put the sucker in like vertically in attack mode, and it's like, and she just called out, I put this card in defense mode and it's vertical, and it's like, and Duke and Tristan's like, oh my freaking god. And then of course Tristan wasting most of his turn because he knows a fair bit amount of dueling, not on a scale to like he doesn't duel much, but he knows how to play the game at the very least. And Duke out of the three is the more better duelist because he played Dungeon Dice Monsters and Duel Monsters, but they probably just not on the same level as like at the very least Joey, but they still can like hold their own. But the fact that you know Tristan was worried too much over Serenity, the fact that he wasted most of his turns taking the brunt of most of her hits, and his life points keeps getting depleted. And Duke was trying to tell him afterwards like, dude, I have monster in defense mode. I could have taken that attack, you idiot, and none of us would have lost any life points. And it's like, well, they couldn't relay that message to each other because Nesbitt wouldn't allow it. So they pretty much had to like guess what the other was gonna go and do. And they never duel with each other. It's not like the way Kaiba and Joey or Kaiba and Yugi or Yugi or Joey, where they seen each other duel and duel with each other or duel against each other long enough to surmise how each other's dueling strategy usually would pan out. Where just like when I was doing a review of Battle City when Yugi and Kaiba was dueling against tag team dueling against Lumas and Umbra, they know their dueling strategy well enough to like they don't have to really speak much. They can like Kaiba when Yugi had that card destruction in his hand and worried about playing it because he doesn't know what's in Kaiba's hand. And Kaiba couldn't very well just flat out tell him. I don't know why. Well, he knows why he can't say because he doesn't want to reveal like what's going on in his partner's hand to the opponent. So it's like he worried about like what he might end up force his teammate to dump, and then Kaiba in a slick move, which I really appreciate, is like, come on already. You couldn't thanks to your sloppy dueling, none of us has anything we can actually play. But no, he said like, come on, you couldn't have screwed us up any worse than you already have. Thanks to your sloppy dueling, like, I have a monster in my hand that can actually help us in this matter. But thanks to your sloppy dueling, I can't play it. It's buried off in the graveyard. And then it's like, Kaiba wants me to dump his cards. I was like, and then he just plays that sucker, and their strategy in full swing when Kaiba used Monster Reborn to just summon his Blue Eyes White Dragon, where he could not normal summon it on normal circumstances. They didn't have this kind of camaraderie, so they had to be stuck doing just guesswork. But Tristan and them losing again, trying to help Serenity so she can at least stay in this duel because he is really legit into her, and also this is his best friend's sister, and like he doesn't want his best friend to lose his sister in this mess. So he sacrifices himself, but leaving a car behind for them to ultimately lose to win the duel, which Serenity ultimately did. But I like because when Tristan fell and lost, Serenity was pretty much catatonic for at least a couple of rounds, while Duke, for the most part, was handling things solo between Nesbitt. And I like the fact that he used, because he's got that Dungeon Dice Monsters game thing, which I really wish they bring that back, had brought it back at some capacity, because we only got like one arc with Duke Devlin. And I really like the whole concept of the Dungeon Dice Monsters thing. And I really wish like there's like a little 3-4 episode arc with him dealing with like his company and a rival of his own and that kind of thing, but that didn't turn out. But I'm glad they allowed Duke to utilize certain cards that was in dice form. Like there's like a field spell card he used. It pretty much turned like the field into like a dungeon dice board, which is so cool. And him and Nesbitt get to roll a die, which results in like certain things like having Duke's Orgoth the Relentless being powerful enough to take down Nesbitt's monsters and blah blah blah. And I forgot like Nesbitt's Deckmaster ability, where he can sacrifice he can like discard 3 machine type monsters in his hand to uh, 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 decrease his opponent's life points by 500. Which now I'm thinking about it, he used it like one each player, but he never just he never wanted to like I don't know, use that ability on one person at a time. Like he easily had took out Serenity fairly quickly, or any one of them fairly quickly, just by discarding like Tristan. He can just lose all 50 right away by discarding 3 cards immediately, and then and do the same thing for each player, and instead of just one separately. But that's just something that just now occurred to me. That was just weird. That's a weird decision. Anyway, ultimately, with Serenity's deck master being allowed to fusion summon a monster without the need for a polymerization card, summon her Saint Joan fusion monster, and destroy the deck master, which Nesbitt called on the field, and ultimately won the duel. But it was a bittersweet win. Uh, uh, but along the way, before we get to the last Big Five member, along the way, Kaiba and Mokuba go down these crazy paths, kind of like Noah's putting them through like a Christmas Carol kind of scenario, where they get to see like their past and Noah's past, and they're trying to figure out who Noah is exactly, because like they're seeing images of him and Gozaburo with each other, and they never met Noah before, so they don't know what the heck is going on. But they ultimately figured out that Noah, before Kaiba and Mokuba came into the picture, Noah was being groomed to lead Kaiba Corp when he grew up, with the help of Gozaburo's resources and like his hiring of different instructors to teach him all kinds of stuff. So he'll have the business mind to lead the company properly, at least the exact same way as Gozaburo has always done it, so nothing would change after Gozaburo is ultimately gone. But it wasn't explained in the English dub, but Noah, they say it was an accident, but in the Japanese, Noah was in like a car accident. He was hit by a car. He was in a coma. So they didn't know when he was coming out of it, and Gozaburo needed an heir. It's hard to say if because in the end, he ultimately didn't care about any of his kids. But at that time, he seemed like he still cared, because he still saw that Noah was taking on, or at least was more receptive of the kind of tutelage or mindset of Gozaburo, which is more ruthless and cold-hearted. But since now his heir is just like in a comatose state, he needed heirs so he can groom to the way he wants things done. He was cared about the heir part rather than the son part, and he digitally downloaded Noah's brain faculties into a big computer and created a virtual world for him to play in, essentially, until they figure out a way to revive his body and blah blah blah. But they couldn't ultimately do it. This is around the time when because Gozaburo was like a big chess guy. He wins a lot of chess tournaments and what have you. But Mokuba and Kaiba, when they went to the orphanage after an accident befell their parents, they never explained who their real parents were. It'd be interesting to find that out, or maybe like one of those kind of fan scriptions, or at least fanfics, to say like who what, because it'd be interesting to know what kind of parents were Kaiba and Mokuba's were before the accident. But they went to this orphanage, and it was a horrible time, according to Mokuba, where he was constantly getting bullied, and Kaiba ultimately always had to like step in and fight off the bullies because Mokuba was so small and was easy to pick on. And that's when, and then like they spend like, most of their time playing chess just to pass the time and at least keep their mind off of the terrible uh, surroundings that befell them. It was pretty much like grew up in like a slums, uh, uh, this like rags to riches story. And when Gozaburo went to this particular orphanage to like do this little photo op thing, Kaiba, as a little kid, stood up and uh, uh, made a proposal where uh, Gozaburo will have to play a chess match with Kaiba, and if Kaiba wins, Gozaburo has to adopt him and Mokuba right off the spot. And if he since got nothing to lose, he can just like if he wins, he just wins, and you don't have to come back here again. But Kaiba ultimately beats Gozaburo at a chess match, and it was probably his first loss, and it was against a kid. So he adopted the both of them, but in like a kind of like a petty move slash idea, where he pretty much at first Gozaburo took the idea, trying to make like lemonade out of lemons. Decided to like groom Seto just the way he tried to groom Noah. But at first he wanted to like, get him, trying to prepare him for like a mind transfer to download Noah's mind into Seto's body. But after a while, when he stopped visiting his cyber son, because he usually frequent with him like at least a couple of times a week, but then he just grew less and less, and Noah felt like completely isolated, which led to him to going insane. But when Kaiba shown to be proven to be an even better, a better fit to run Kaiba Corp potentially, he just needed to like exercise his individuality to supplant his Gozaburo's kind of mindset in his stead. But unlike Noah, Kaiba had Mokuba to get him out of that darkness at least a little bit, which would explain why when we first met Kaiba, he was kind of like a evil prick instead of like a well, Kaiba's kind of like a stick in the mud prick, but he still is like a decent person. But before that, he was like an evil prick until Yugi kind of mind crushed him to expel that kind of darkness that was festered or implanted by Gozaburo when he was like a young age in a way, because his upbringing was like rough thanks to Gozaburo and his influence. And when at a certain point, Kaiba was ready to give up until Mokuba, snuck him some Duel Monsters cards to cheer him up, and then also drew him a Blue Eyes White Dragon, which encouraged him even more to get through this so he can one day own a Blue Eyes White Dragon card of his own. But then when he was a little older, maybe like a year or two later after this event, Gozaburo finally decided to test Kaiba to see if he's ultimately ready after all these like study sessions and whatnot. And he gave Kaiba 2% of Kaiba Corp to do with the money whatever he chooses. But the stipulation is he has to pay that money back in a year's time plus interest. And if he can't do that, both of those brothers are going back to the orphanage. No ifs, ands, or buts. So Kaiba accepted the challenge. And the last Big Five member, Lecter, was asked to assist Kaiba with anything that he needs to get this up and away. So, and like a business, like a very smart business move. Well, it's kind of a slimy way of doing it, but he did it. It was just like, I gotta respect the cleverness of it, but the efficacies is like kind of like really like tough to watch. But Kaiba had Lecter find like a company, you know, that treats his employees like family. So Kaiba, threatened if you don't give him like the ultimate shares or the complete control over this particular company, he would, because he already is majority shareholder, but he wants to be a complete shareholder. And if the person doesn't do that, then he will just lay off everybody, and they all be on the street. And this is a kid, mind you, threatening an adult like that. So he ultimately completed his task in like 2 days. In 2 days, he paid back that money and proving to Gozaburo that no, he's like the real, like like his business mind is even more cunning than Gozaburo. And it's like he's like the his like so he's like the better Kaiba. And it's like it's shocked, everybody. But uh Kaiba then realized that, we need to oust this guy. He's already like a complete creep to everybody, which helped Kaiba influence the Big Five members into convincing them to, give all their shares to him, so that way he will be ultimately, along with Mokuba, to give, because he also had like a bit of shares too, being like a Kaiba and also heir to the company. They all pull their money together into Kaiba, making him the majority shareholder and him pushing Gozaburo out, which in Japanese caused Gozaburo to commit suicide, but in English he just went missing. There's a lot of missing people in the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. And Gozaburo ultimately had his mind downloaded into the cyber systems, which he ultimately shows up towards the end tail of this arc. But anyway, back to the main story, where Nesbit kidnapped Mokuba to bring to Noah, and then as Kaiba and the rest of the team started chasing after them, they met up with Lecter, whose deck master was Jinzo, who challenges Kaiba and nullifies a lot of his trap cards, whittling his chances of victory, instead of like, well, at least by, a good third. But anyway, Kaiba, like his deck, his strategy is like kind of brilliant because he uses like injection fairy lily to like, take his life points, so that way if you subtract 2,000 life points, that results in injection fairy lily monster card to increase her life points by 3,000, because its originally base number is 400, increasing it by 3,000, making it 3,400, making it strong enough to defeat anything Kaiba might put on the field, even a single Blue Eyes. But I got something to drink here. But the strategy he put together is where he had like solemn wishes and what's that trap card? The life absorbing machine and Civic's blessing, like a lot of cards that requires him to increase his life points. He also uses a trap card, Imperial Order, that nullifies if as long as Lecter sacrifices 700 life points each of each of his turns, nullifies any magic cards that Kaiba has. So now he's negated, or at least refrained from using magic and trap cards. So he only has his monsters until like Kaiba pulled like a decent move where he uh, put Lecter in a position to uh, destroy his Imperial Order because he doesn't want to sacrifice any more life points. He can't afford it anymore. So, which allows Kaiba to start using magic cards again, which ultimately allowed him to summon his blue eyes to destroy Lecter's satellite cannon, which in the anime is way up in space because it's like a big satellite technically, and each turn it has 0 attack points. Each his turns that goes by, its attack power rises by 1,000 until the point when he fires it goes back to 0. So no monster Kaiba has technically can't reach the satellite cannon to destroy it until like Kaiba summons blue eyes to actually fly up there and destroy it. But in real life, that doesn't happen. You can destroy satellite cannon fairly easily once his life point, once his attack power is 0 again. But anyway, after Kaiba beats him, they finally meet up with Noah, and Noah brainwashes Mokuba into his like mind slave essentially, and Noah and Kaiba battle. Now Noah, I always thought that was like a very clever pun in a way, because Noah's deck master is this ritual magic card, Sonato's Arc, Noah's Arc, and this deck master absorbs all the monsters that was sent to the graveyard into the Arc, being like the animals of the said story. But his cards are ultimately based off of like different deities from different religions, like the way Pegasus designed them. Like his ritual monster, Shinato, King of the Higher Plane, is kind of based off of the Hindu god Krishna. And there's a lot of like Buddhist deity references in some of these are spirit monster cards. And I played them too. I played Noah's deck that I built in when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist. You can check that out on my channel, see how I play it. I will play it again soon. But yeah, the spirit monsters have like a ability that it's kind of like the way Jada and Yugi's Neo-Spacian monsters operate, the fusion ones, where it automatically goes back to your, well, in Jaden's case, back to the deck. But in Noah's case, his cards go back to his hand at the end of each of his turns. But of course, there's certain cards that Noah has to keep him on the field, or there's cards that increases his life points every time they have to be put back into his hand. And his life points just keep getting increased massively, which is proven difficult for Yugi to deal with, because after Kaiba almost won, but Noah used Mokuba as like a meat shield to prevent Kaiba from attacking through him to get to Noah, which then forces Kaiba to end his turn. So in the next turn, he didn't beat Kaiba technically. Mokuba broke the mind control and ran towards Kaiba. This part is gonna get kind of sadistic. Noah pulled like a curveball and started turning right before the brothers reach each other, just inches away. He turns them to stone, and it's like very heartbreaking because like Mokuba's statue literally was starting crying tears, and then Kaiba still technically had life points left. He didn't technically win, and Noah didn't technically win the body. And Yugi chastises him. It's like, you was chastising the Big Five about winning with honor, and you just pull this stunt. You have no honor, and I will take Kaiba's place, and I will finish the duel. Then you can say you're able to be big and better and more capable of running Kaiba Corp. And this is the part where, like I mentioned earlier, about how like the way the writing handled to put Kaiba in that position, I didn't fully agree with that. It's just that I wish it's kind of like the way in Dragon Ball Super where, because I mentioned this in my video that I made about like how Dragon Ball Z, some Dragon Ball Z characters get shafted in the franchise, uh, thanks for mostly people, the writers, always depending on Goku to save the day when there's like plenty of other Z fighters that are more than capable, or at least should be by the point of Super's timeline, should be strong enough to hang with at least, uh, well, I think Piccolo should be strong enough to hang with Super Saiyan 4 Goku for a few minutes by this point in time. And the other Z fighters should be strong enough to hang with Super Saiyan 3 for a short period of time, instead of being like just jobbers and getting their ass rocked. I mean, like, I don't mean to rehash this, but it has to be said. By Super, when Golden Frieza arc was playing out and Frieza came back, by that point, Vegeta and especially Krillin, because all that stuff came flashing back towards Krillin, he getting PTSD again from seeing Frieza, and remember how Frieza blew him up on Planet Namek. Krillin definitely should have been shown to come a long way since then, and by that point, obviously he can't hang with Golden Frieza. But the Frieza's regular state, the way they last saw him, Krillin should have been like strong enough to like and fast enough to be like within seconds up on Frieza's grill and deck him immediately with no question. He should be well strong enough to like and like well trained enough to be able to show Frieza that he's not that punk that he. Well, he's not punk, but he's not like the chump that he saw the last time they met. He's been gone a long time, and they've been through a lot of stuff, and that's why I feel about this, like, because they ultimately like treat them like chumps, and Vegeta could have pulled off the win and made that his Vegeta should have been his like moment to shine until like Goku ultimately usurps that moment, and that's how I kind of feel. It's not the same way. This is like more of like a lesser extent, but it's kind of like it's kind of the same way where like Yugi's ultimately the one that has to save everything. But this is Kaiba's thing. This is Kaiba's problem. Kaiba should be the ultimately one to deal with this and beat Noah flat out. But Yugi took on Noah, and Noah, getting irritated with Yugi's cheer section, and by the end of each of Yugi's turn that he did not defeat Noah, he turns one of Yugi's friends to stone, and each one is like just turn to stone, which breaking like Yugi's will to go on until like their spirits encourage him to like keep playing and fighting on, which allows Yugi the will to something like, cause Yami Yugi has that ability to like draw the card that he needs to ultimately win. So he drew a card of sanctity, drew cards, and each one of those cards allow him to summon Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon to beat Noah. But then and then everybody reverts back to their human forms. But then Noah tried to like force himself into taking over Yugi's body, but thanks to the Pharaoh's mystical powers kind of rebuffed him. But for a split second, they each looked inside each other's minds, and Yugi saw Noah's history. It was kind of like sad, the way like Ghost World was like, the way he was being raised and the accident and everything like that. And then Noah freaking out, seeing all these glimpses and flashes of the Pharaoh's past, and like Noah's like freaking out, like, what the hell are you? And of course then Ghost World starts stepping in, pretty much laying out like he didn't really ultimately care about any of them. He just needed an heir to take over Kabucorp because he knew he wasn't going to be around and all. But then he got the brilliant idea, is the fact that he can use space to like take over a lot of satellites and other machinery to like put the entire world into a virtual world with him as the ultimate ruler. So Kaiba went off to stop him. He challenged Goes Abroad to a one last game between the two in Duel Monsters. Well, at least Goes Abroad challenged Kaiba. Uh, uh, and Goes Abroad using a different variation of the Exodia pieces because that card, or at least card set, was like a bane of Kaiba's existence because he gets PTSD every time you think about it because that represents his first ultimate loss against anybody, which in this case was against Yugi. So Goes Abroad uses this knowledge to psychologically affect Kaiba, try to hinder his dueling strategies, but that didn't really work. But instead of like in normal circumstances getting the 5 pieces of Exodia into your hand to ultimately win, to automatically win, Goes Abroad put the 5 pieces into the graveyard so he can activate the magic card, contract with Exodia, so he can summon Exodia Necros. And Exodia Necros is a very beast of a card, where as long as each of those 5 pieces are of the Exodia are in the graveyard, Necros is immune to being destroyed, immune to magic cards, trap cards, effect cards, and his power increases after each battle. His attack power is increased by each battle. But for a little while, Kaiba figured out that for at least a little while that he can at least still attack Necros as long as he has a more powerful monster at his disposal. At his disposal, because Goes World's life points can still be affected. He's not immune to that. But at a certain point, Necros got too powerful for any monster that Kaiba can use to still do that strategy. But Kaiba used Solar Release Magic Card to remove the 5 pieces of Exodia from the graveyard, which nullifies Necros' abilities. And that's the thing. When dealing with if you're battling with an Exodia player, they're strong cards, but their weakness lies in the pieces. Like if you're trying to dealing with a duelist trying to get all 5 pieces in their hand, try to destroy their hand or try to figure out a way to remove those cards from their from the hand or from the deck and put them in the graveyard or remove them completely from play. That way that strategy is complete. Or if you're dealing with someone who's trying to use Exodia Necros, just completely remove them from play. Don't put them in the hand because then you might at least try to remove some of the cards from the graveyard and either remove them from play completely or put them back in the hand. Don't put them all in the hand. Just enough so that way, like if you remove one piece of Exodia that has Necros be able to avoid being destroyed by magic cards or trap cards, remove those pieces so that way you can at least use something like Mirror Force to destroy Necros. You gotta at least remove some of the abilities to allow for destruction of that card. So that's where like how you can defeat somebody who uses Exodia stuff. But anyway, then when Kaiba beats Goes Abroad, he Goes Abroad turned into this red shadowy monsters try to like attack Yugi and Kaiba as they're trying to escape while everybody else already escaped from the virtual world because their bodies were still in the real world. It's just that they thought they was completely transported into the virtual world, but they were like as they're like plummeting, the cybernetics in the tunnels put them ultimately to sleep, and their bodies was dragged into virtual pods where they was ultimately put in the virtual world without their knowledge. But thanks to Noah, who had like a change of heart and saw, thanks to Mokuba, who showed him true love that and acknowledgement and respect that he never gotten from Goes Abroad at all, and sorely lacked in the virtual world, he finally found that true love from like a family, and, he saw Mokuba as like a real brother. He uses his, uh, you know, uh, the control he had over the cyber world, at least what he still had, without Gozaboro's interference, held Gozaboro down while the virtual world was being destroyed. Uh, and then ultimately, that's the last we've seen of Gozaboro and Noah. And I mean, this is a nice little arc for Kaiba, and kind of like uh, put into perspective of their upbringing and why Kaiba is the way he is, uh, and why he probably value like, money and resources and science and everything like that, because he lives in like a practical world. At least in his viewpoint, he lives in like a practical world. That's why he doesn't like to hear anything about like magic, mumbo jumbo kind of stuff, because he has such a, like I said, he had like a rags to riches kind of story. So once he's in that, because it's like one of those people that like you live like in like a poor state and you become rich, you become more appreciative of your lifestyle because you know what it's like to be poor, and you don't want to revert back to that kind of thing. I mean, Kaiba, smart as he is and capable of as he is, he turned that company into like a more bigger and better company. And like, I will eventually review the Yu-Gi-Oh movies, but I think Kaiba, for he like I didn't know he was like Tony Stark kind of smart, because in one of the Yu-Gi-Oh movies he built a freaking time machine just to go back and to duel the Pharaoh. And it's like, you're supposed to be a gaming company, you building like like satellites and time machines and crap. Like, God. But anyway, now after that saga was over, now we on to the final arc, the Shadow Realm arc of the finish of the Battle City finals. Finally, they traveled to this island that used to be like another uh, factory that was ran by Gozaburo building war machines, but Kaiba repurposed it to make it like a dueling tower, where like inside the last four finalists, Kaiba, Yugi, Merrick, and Joey can do like a 1v3 type of duel, where it's not really like a major stakes to it. We're just deciding who will duel each other first before the finals. Yugi and Kaiba duel after Merrick and Joey duel. Now this one is very controversial, because I said controversial. Controversial. Joey, I think this is probably like the first time in any anime that I can think of where the best friend character could have potentially took down the big bad of an anime. And thanks to like the writing, I can't even decide if it was like good writing to get people's hopes up, thinking like he can actually win, but then ultimately doesn't. Kind of like pull the wool over our eyes, but or just like dumb writing, where it's just like, why would you put in that position? And it's like, I don't know. It's hard to grasp their thought process behind it, but I assume the first part where they just want to like show Joey's level of skill dealing with this guy, but ultimately Yugi had to fight the major bad guy. I mean, what I would have probably done is just like do Yugi versus Merrick right off the bat. Well, at least have Kaiba and Joey duel each other, with obviously Kaiba winning. That way Joey didn't have to, because ultimately Joey went to the Shadow Realm. He lost, but he tanked, the full force of Winged Dragon and Ra, and still managed to stand. Even on top of that, with the Shadow Realm, every time his monsters are destroyed, he loses a bit more energy. But he only had enough left over to summon Geoffrey the Iron Knight, but could not call out the attack to ultimately win. He passed out from like the major exhaustion and the beating he was taking. But I would have probably made it where like Yugi can still take on Merrick and defeat the darkness and win, and Kaiba could duel against Joey, which they ultimately end up doing anyway for like the episode for Battle for the Bronze, little uh, 2 or 3 episode thing they did. Uh, uh, but then have like the ultimate duel against Yugi and Kaiba for the winner of the Battle City. They could have still done it that way without having to deal with the heartbreak of watching Joey lose in that way and go to the Shadow Realm. It's just like it broke a lot of people's hearts. And like I think like yeah, Joey should have won. He really should have won that duel. It was like by rights because there was no cards on Merrick's side of the field after he used the last bit of cards he did to summon Ra's Phoenix form to take down or attack Joey. But they had to, it was like a punk way to drum up emotions like that. But anyway, I mean that's how it panned out. Because by this point, Merrick's like his dark side is completely taken over, and his good side uh, going into like, it's kind of like a spirit. He's just floating around, uh, talking to the pastor Odeon, who was ultimately the only person who was keeping Merrick's dark side in check, and then possessing Taya, which a lot of people are using Taya's body like a puppet, or at least want to use Taya's body like a puppet, and be able to like Merrick was able to confess his sins pretty much to the Pharaoh and just plead his case, saying he's sorry. He realized his error of his ways. He apologized to his sister. It's like it might be the last time he speaks to her, so he wanted to get everything he can, off his chest. We learned that his upbringing is very tragic because the fact that he had because during the time of the Pharaoh, before in the past when the Pharaoh was taking on the ultimate darkness of that time, and he tasked a family, which was the ancestors of Merrick and the Sisu, who are tomb keepers, to handle the memories of the Pharaoh for him until his return at some point. So each generation, the family looked after the Pharaoh's secrets and all the other stuff until it came down to Merrick, his father, and Sisu. But the men are ultimately the ones that handled the burden with getting a tattoo of the secrets on the male heirs' backs, probably the oldest ones. But Merrick was like the only son. But he was going through like a very abusive father who was like a very big zealot of the Pharaoh, not realizing nobody knew when the Pharaoh was supposed to return. For all they knew, he probably never will return. But the father did not want Merrick to be influenced by the outside world. They live in solitude underneath the ground for the most part, and like this drove Merrick insane. His dark side was birthed, and he ultimately killed the father. I mean, the Millennium Rod is actually a secret dagger, and he used it to stab the father to death. Odeon was the only one that was able to like hold Merrick's dark side back, but the good Merrick still had resentment, which ultimately turned him to like starting this group of rare hunters to hunt down the Egyptian god cards to ultimately carry the burden of being the pharaoh and ruling the world. But he also needed the Millennium Puzzle, which he eventually found out that it's around Little Yugi's neck, which now was also his task, along with making sure he got all the Egyptian god cards, which he ultimately didn't have because Caesar took the last one to give it to Kaiba to ultimately get everybody together in this tournament with Kaiba and Yugi dealing with her brother to keep him from claiming ultimate power. And then his dark side came into the mix and threw everything in a monkey wrench to everything. But then the Coliseum duel. This is probably one of my favorite duels out of the entire Yu-Gi-Oh series, where Kaiba and every card he can possibly throw at Yugi, along with Yugi doing the exact same thing, and these two going head to head, and like, of course, you see on Duel again and other stuff and like in movies and everything like that. But this is one that's like you got like these two badass duelists like going at each other hard, and it's like the best. And like even kind of turn like the uh dueling arena into like a Roman Coliseum just to give it some theatricality. It was so good. It was like, and like the duel starts when like each one trying to prevent the other from summoning their Egyptian god card, like using a lifesaver sword to prevent Kaiba from summoning Obelisk for 3 turns, and then each other using magic cards like Soul Exchange or Chains of Heart to try to steal each other's cards just to not only prevent the other from getting the necessary monsters needed to summon, but also getting the acquired level number of monsters on their side of the field to summon. But it was like a nice, cool tit for tat between the two. It was so much fun. I enjoyed the hell out of that duel. Every time I see it, it's so much fun. Then, but Yugi ultimately was the one that managed to summon Slifer first. But then, eventually, Kaiba was summoning Obelisk. And then, they each trying to play around with the other's monster's attack power just to make sure they got one up each other. It's a nice little. It's kind of like JoJo Bizarre Adventure when like the opponents trying to one up each other with like clever strategies, but they end up destroying each other. So now they gotta rely on their normal deck, the rest of their deck to like win the day. With Yugi and Kaiba rely on their headliner and deck cards, Dark Magician and the wing and the Blue Eyes White Dragons. But in the meantime, while this duel is going on, Joey's in a comatose state, but he managed to get through this. I don't know what the purpose of the dream he was having with him dueling, because it's very weird. Not weird. It's like, it was fun to see just Joey but it's just like a pointless. It's hard to say it's pointless. To some people, it might seem pointless, but I guess it's supposed to show that Joey was pushing through in like a duel like formula, just to at least like personification, just to like personify him pushing through the darkness to ultimately will himself out of the Shadow Realm, which him and Odeon is the only ones that I can think of that actually managed to do so. At least only normal people that actually have to, because nobody ever gotten out of the Shadow Realm on their own without the assistance from some outside force with a Millennium item. But it was like a surprising state when I first saw it. When like, holy crap, he actually pulled himself out of the Shadow Realm just by sheer force of will. But it's just like, I liked it. It's still fun to watch, like Joey like just like going through his mindscape just to get out of the mess. But I can also see the other side of it, whereas like that's probably not really ultimately needed. Just like, I don't know, you got to show something entertaining just to show Joey getting out of that Shadow Realm. Odeon did the same thing, but it's more so thanks to I think, yeah, now matter of fact, now I'm thinking about things like from the scene with Odeon and Good Merrick. Good Merrick managed to, like, as he's speaking in his spirit form, pleading to Odeon for forgiveness and everything like that, and those words piercing through the darkness to reach Odeon to ultimately wake him up out of his coma. I think Serenity did the exact same thing for Joey, giving him like a bit of courage, mostly in his mind thinking like it was getting through this mindscape duel, but then ultimately waking him up. Uh, uh, they all managed to like get to like the top of the tower to see Yugi beat Kaiba in a duel, which infuriates uh, Kaiba. But and like I like this scene uh, after the Coliseum duel. The fact that uh, Yugi and Joey and Taya giving Kaiba the business, because the fact that after the arc with Noah, you would think Kaiba will learn something from that, but he still like was gung ho because they got visions of like what's going on with like I think it's supposed to be like images of the destroyed. It was images of destroyed Egypt, but I'm not sure if that was like the future of what's going to happen if they don't beat Merrick. That everything's going to turn to like because there's like a big giant statues of not Ra, Slifer and Obelisk, but it might be Slifer and Obelisk because be they could not take down Winged Dragon or Ra on their own because Winged Dragon and Ra is like the most powerful out of the three. Uh, is just the world is going to pretty much doomed, and they pretty much getting like a glimpse of that, but they're also getting a glimpse of their past with their ancestors, pretty much their ancestors, their reincarnations of the pharaoh and his priest, priest Seto, and we are led to believe that priest Seto was a bad guy in that situation, but it's more to it than that. We'll get to it once we get to the end of the series, but things aren't what they seem to be. But Kaiba refuses to believe anything he's seen, thinking he's like just exhausted or just losing it or like something's malfunctioning with his tech. But after his loss, Kaiba's is like more angry. It's like Yuki's giving him the business Kaiba. It's like, how can you just be like that pig-headed? It's like they're always telling him like is our past that shapes us, that informs our future. And it's like, and then they're trying to like, and he's just not hearing anything from any one of them. It's like why are you acting like this? You harden your heart, and it's probably because it still goes to Boro in a way affecting him in a way from his upbringing. It kind of put Kaiba in a position, unlike the way Mokuba remembers him, because even Mokuba got in his face at some point. Like, you used to smile more. It's like you walled off your heart after a certain point, and you just like cause the only emotion he has towards anybody is for his little brother. Outside of that, pretty much F everybody else. But and Joey got in his face was like, you've been dogging me ever since we met, and you've been talking about how superior you are to me. So put your money where your mouth is and duel me for the battle for the bronze. And Kai was like relents, and Joey's, Mokuba tried to intercede. It's like, you way out of line there, Joey. And it's like, how can you defend him, Mokuba? Didn't he just say like, he rather doing things like he doesn't need anybody? Doesn't that mean you? Doesn't that qualify you as everybody? And it's like they ultimately duel, which Kaiba used Crest card to like nullify a lot of Joey's strong monster cards, but Joey did like manage to hold his own even though he ultimately lost. But and I like this scene in the middle of the duel where like Joey's trying to tell him like, dude, just lighten up. This is a duel. We're supposed to be having fun. Why you gotta be so serious all the damn one time? And then Mokuba, because after Asichu's trying to give him the business, I'm like, you have to stay because the pharaoh needs you. It's like, and then Mokuba's telling Kaiba, it's like, you used to smile more, because I think Mokuba is more receptive to what's going on than Kaiba is, seeing what he's saying. He's not totally in the camp of magic, real kind of stuff, but he's willing to listen. And after what he's witnessing with people going to comas and people, getting hurt and everything like that. It's like, maybe it's something to what they're saying. At least, help Yugi, because, because if the stopping Merrick means that, you have to help Yugi win the tournament, then you have to do it, man. And it's like, because Muga was the only person that Kaiba was even willing to listen to. So, Kaiba relents, go to the top of the tower, hands Yugi a Fing's Sanctuary magic card, which is, with thanks to Kaiba's research, figures that this card is like as a good blocker to a lot of Ra's abilities. So Yugi, with another awesome duel against Merrick, who's just like a freaking nut job at this point. He's like very sadistic. He's just like chaos incarnate. Uh, uh, he he puts them immediately into a shadow game, and he put their good sides, Little Yugi and Good Merrick, against like the walls of the shadow realm, and like they pretty much like held there. And anytime any one of them loses life points, the good side's body loses a piece of themselves, and looks hardcore in the English dub, but I'm pretty sure like in the manga, I think it's like a little more harsher than that, because it looked like in the English dub it's just they're being erased. Kind of like a piece of them getting snapped, Thanos snapped away little by little. But I'm pretty sure the shadow is kind of like invisible monsters gnawing at them or something like that. A little bit at a time. It's like a little harsher. Kind of like in the Japanese version of the duel with Arcana, when those glowing shadow energy disc was showing up. In the Japanese, it's actually buzzsaw blades, and it's like it was a little more hardcore than the English dub would like for you to believe. Thanks, kids, WB Konami. But Yugi dueling against Merrick, I mean, it was a great duel and very intense. But when Odeon finally wake up and managed to make it to the duel, he his voice reaches out to the good side of Merrick, which this part kind of confused me. It's like Good Merrick was ready to like resign himself to the shadows and give up because it doesn't feel like he's strong enough to overpower his dark side, until Odeon speaks up like, "You're strong enough to overpower your good side." And then Merrick, I'm paraphrasing, it's like Merrick was like, "Yeah, I am powerful." You can leave with that on your own. You need somebody to actually tell you that. But anyway, he like he managed to like gains the strength to like at least put up a fight in his own head with his dark side. But Yugi was ultimately able to pull a cool, because he summoned both his Egyptian god cards in this duel. Of course, Merrick summoned his Winged Dragon Ra, but Ra was able to like deal with them both like in the end. But Yugi pulled this cool magic card called Ragnarok, which causes like an awesome display where like all Yugi's monsters from his entire deck, even the Egyptian god cards, come out and hold down Ra while he's combined with Merrick to ultimately destroy him. But with that stunt, causes the positions of Good Merrick and Bad Merrick to flip-flop. So now Good Merrick is back in the real world, while Bad Merrick is stuck pinned to the he's what's left of him. He's got one eyeball left, pinned against the Shadow Realm wall, and with one life point left, Good Merrick decides to like surrender the duel to ultimately have the Shadow Realm claim the darkness of the Dark Merrick and dispel him. So then Yugi is the ultimate winner of the Battle City tournament. And then Merrick hands him the Millennium Ring, the rod, and showed him his naked backside in front of everybody so he can read the secrets so he can complete his task as a tomb keeper. So that way, uh, Yugi can gain some knowledge from what he saw from there, which we'll get to when we review the season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh during the Seal of Orikako's arc. But uh, everybody's coming out of their Shadow Realm coma. Mai's back. Bakura's back, along with Bakura's dark side. He's back too. He's little ghostly form, like came out. I don't know, like everybody. Well, I think it was Merrick who was like, "Thank you for helping me, Pharaoh." And then like the ghostly form of Bakura's like in the back somewhere. Like, yes, thank you. So like he's back. I love that. That was my Dark Bakura is probably like my favorite anime villain of all time. I love that character. I love the voice actor of Dark Bakura a lot. But yeah, good Bakura is back too, and everybody's happy and healthy. Anybody involved into the who was under the control or hurt in any way by Dark Merrick is back and better. They get off Kaiba Island before Kaiba ultimately blows it up. And just in like a badass moment, him and Mokuba fly off in like a separate jet made to look like a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Him just laughing his butt off along the way, like freaking Mandark from Dexter's Laboratory. Ha 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 ha. Like, peace out, dorks, and just flies off as the place is blowing up, and the Yugi and his friends are on the mainland in Domino City, and each one's like giving off their goodbyes. Duke is heading off, after the Avengers. He's like trying to sneak his phone number to Serenity, which Tristan like intercepting, like yeah, she's not gonna call you, Duke. And then then Mai says her goodbyes. Obviously, her and Joey, ultimately is going to end up together, but they have obviously a connection. And then Serenity says she saw Maya as like a big sister to her. So that was a nice moment between her and Joey. Just the fact that after Maya was told of what Joey went through just to bring her back, and she thought that was like a nice thing, because Joey's before she met every of these people, Maya was ultimately always been alone. That was probably like her biggest fear. That's what she was dealing with in the Shadow Realm, is being walled off, away from everybody, being ultimately alone. And to know that Joey went out of the way to like get her, it just like it meant something more than people realize. I really like that. I love Maya as a character. She's like probably one of my favorite female Yu-Gi-Oh characters of all time, because not only she has like a great arc, she's a badass duelist. I just wish it was shown a lot more that she can like actually duel and win, instead of being like treated like a treated like a Krillin, or a not like Krillin or Yamcha, but it's like always losing like a battle. I mean, she won a couple of times that we've seen, but throughout the series, but it's like she won so many tournaments. You should be displayed that she can actually play and win. But then before the series ends, early in the crack of dawn, Yugi meets up with Joey, because he still has Joey's red eyes, and Joey said he would not take back his red eyes until he wins it legitimately off of Yugi in a duel. So the duel is left ambiguous. They didn't even show any kind of like opening hands or plays at all. Just left it at that. But in the next season, you'll see red eyes back in Joey's deck. Now, obviously we all know Joey would not beat Yugi any way, shape, or form. It's even stated by Maximilian Pegasus during the second season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX when he was cameoing that uh, the rank of the greatest duelist in the world is Yugi, Joey. Yugi, Kaiba, Joey, uh, uh, and Ash the Phoenix. I think Jaden at some point was probably gonna be up there too, as far as like being usurping Ash the Phoenix as far as like number four best duelist. Uh, uh, but uh, Joey more than likely, yeah, lost, and Yugi probably just gave back his red eyes regardless. That's the most plausible scenario that I would see. And I think a lot of people would agree. There's no way like Joey would have won. I'm pretty sure he gave because you've seen in like Duel's Kingdom that Joey can hold his own with Yugi in like a fair duel and everything like that. But with zero stakes, I'm pretty sure it'll be a whole lot more fun. I kind of wish we would have actually saw that. Uh, but I think it's probably best, maybe. I mean, in the eyes of the writers, I think it was best to be left ambiguous and just to end on like a cool note. But yeah, that was season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Noah's Ark, uh, and the Shadow Realm arc. I once again will do like another binge watch of Jackie Chan Adventures of season 3 of that. Once I'm done with that, I'll do a review for that. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Target of Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Follow me on my Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/Target of Carl. If you have any ideas for any reviews that you want me to do, like movie, comic, just leave. Just build this community, and like I would definitely put you as a priority on the list. Make the review, and give you a nice little shout out. Of course, Patreon members get early access. And please leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys thought of season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. And like, did you like the Battle City? Did you what you think? What's your pros and cons of the entire season? What was your favorite duel? What was your least favorite duel? And yeah, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.